Mame fa say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV de osia dem yopo.
KwesiPratt ato ensembe amane NDC amanyokulo. Yeah, what I say NDC air campaign they championed on oral. Say on be recover sika. A previous administration appointees area. KwesiPratt Jr. said that oral is becoming a problem for the NDC administration currently. Now say no near Ghana for yehwehwe ene se obi biara wadi bone dream kata se hye proye ene kankan obi biara ye investigations e wona ho te se chama Wontumi GiftyOware edu Boahen ene nenkeka ho no omo face severe consequences, severe prosecution. KwesiPratt said dear Ghana for any daso and as expected from this administration jailing people who looted in the previous administration, recovering the loot, and after no punishing them severely. And some way, and some who will be a KwesiPratt Jr. Eretuja, Abra Auto and same way, Amane NDC Amanyokuno concerning their campaign on the oral Operation Recover All Loot, and after so no Equania, Omokasa on the fighting corruption.
Yes. The Senate wants us to discuss. The first point I'd like to make is that whether or not corruption will be punished, whether or not persons who are accused of corruption will be convicted and so on, does not depend on government. It doesn't depend on government. You understand? Because we have structured our society in such a way that when it comes to these matters, the responsibility of government is limited to prosecution. And the final arbiters in this matter are those who sit on the judicial bench. So it is not up to government to convict anybody. Understand? The Attorney General and his office may do diligent investigations. They may gather all the facts and so on. Eventually, they have to place it before a judge who will make a determination as to whether the allegations are true or false. And who will also make a determination as to the kind of punishment to exact if it is proven that corruption has occurred or stealing has occurred or whatever. So we should understand that. And you see, the processes of investigating corruption, prosecuting corruption, and seeking conviction is a very complex one. It involves the police. And my goodness, I want anybody to tell me that the police can be NPP or NDC. Somebody must tell me that. But it involves the police. It involves statutory bodies. Like, is it FIC?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
It involves the National Bureau of Investigations. It involves the YOCO. It involves so many institutions which do not necessarily take their cue and direction from government, which in essence, by the Constitution, the provisions of the Constitution, are expected to act as independent organs. Okay? Now the matter is made worse by the creation of that contraption called Office of Special Prosecutor. And you know why I say that? I've taken the trouble to carefully read Article 88 clauses 1 to 6 of the Constitution. And if you read Article 88 clause 1 to 6 of the Constitution, we are left in no doubt, there's no doubt at all, that the power to prosecute is vested in only one authority, and that authority is the Attorney General. The original power to prosecute is not vested in the Office of Special Prosecutor. It is not vested in the police. It is vested in the Attorney General. Okay? So all these contraptions that we have created over the years are contraptions which in law ought to be subordinate to the Attorney General. Subordinate to the Attorney General. Okay? Is this the Constitution?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I would read the Constitution in order to make my point. You see, if you take Article 88, Section 1, it says, there shall be an Attorney General of Ghana who shall be a Minister of State and principal legal advisor to the government. Clear. 2, the Attorney General shall discharge such other duties of a legal nature as may be referred to or assigned to him by the President or imposed upon him by this Constitution or any other law. 3, the Attorney General shall be responsible for the initiation and conduct of all prosecutions of criminal offenses. 3 is very clear, and I repeat it. The Attorney General shall be responsible for the initiation and conduct of all prosecutions of criminal offenses. 4, all offenses prosecuted in the name of the Republic of Ghana shall be at the suit of the Attorney General or any other person authorized by him in accordance with any law. You understand? What this means is that the special prosecutor cannot prosecute a case without the authorization of the Attorney General. The Attorney General shall be responsible for the institution and conduct of all civil cases on behalf of the state, and all civil proceedings against the state shall be instituted against the Attorney General as defendant. The Attorney General shall have audience in all courts in Ghana. So Article 88 is clear. Now you have to read Article 88 within the confines of interpretation of law. And you cannot do that outside the principle of the hierarchy of laws. In this country, laws include provisions of the Constitution, it includes laws made by Parliament, and it includes precedents in the court and so on. Now, if you look at the hierarchy of laws, every other law ought to be consistent with the provisions of the Constitution or it loses its validity. Okay? So, the Act which establishes the Office of Special Prosecution is an inferior law as compared to the provisions of the Constitution. And indeed, that law does not amend Article 88 or any section of Article 88. Now, everybody knew this. The parliamentarians who passed the Act, the president who signed the Act, all of us who made commentary about it knew that what was doing was a useless contraption. We knew it. What happened then? At the time, the NDC members of Parliament decided not to oppose the Act in order not to create the impression that they had become obstacles in the fight against corruption. So for some public relations reasons and so on, they allowed that Act to be passed. NPP members of Parliament knew the force of Article 88. And they knew that they were creating a Frankenstein monster only in looks and not in substance. But they too did not want to be seen to be obstructing a dream of their president. And they wanted to create the impression that they were taking the fight against corruption to another level and so on. So you need to top it all. Do you... Oh, please.
No, don't worry, please continue. So that you don't break your chain of thoughts.
Okay,
don't worry, it's okay.
Who would believe that Mr. Martin Amidu was appointed as the first special prosecutor by accident? Accident. Was it by accident?
No.
And if it was by design, what informed that design? That should tell you the whole story about the creation of the Office of Special Prosecutor. You understand what I'm saying? Now we have created that office. Whatever it is, we have created that office. But we have created that office without curing the problem that we thought existed at the time. And what was the problem? And I listened to my good friend Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo very, very clearly, former president. And he said that his objective was to ensure that prosecutions are not politically tainted. And that because as president, he is the one who appoints the Attorney General, and the Attorney General is part of his cabinet and so on. If the Attorney General were to go after criminal elements or those who had committed corruption and so on, the public perception is maybe that he was witch hunting. But in the final analysis, it's the same president who appoints the Attorney General who also appoints the OSP. So did we go or did we come? Doesn't make sense. We haven't cured any problem. You understand? Now, so that problem we sought to cure has not been cured at all, because OSPs are appointed also by presidents, and so we haven't cured that problem. But then in real practice, it is leading to some problems. You understand? Some problems. And one of the problems which has come up recently has to do with the case of Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta. And you see, I was going to say Suhini. Sana, listen very carefully. Why Mr. Ofori-Atta is not in this jurisdiction is the claim that he has prostate cancer. That's the claim. Suhini.
Who doesn't that?
I can bet my bottom cedi that today, even if you go on the bench, the judiciary, you will find judges who are working who have prostate cancer. If you go to the police service,
It's like pregnancy.
you find high-ranking officers in the police service who are working who have prostate cancer.
Even the OSP's office.
If you go to the OSP's office, you are likely to find people there who have prostate cancer and are working. Prostate cancer is not a debilitating health condition anymore. Do you know how many people have prostate cancer? If you go to our prisons, you find people there with prostate cancer. So prostate cancer, it cannot be a sufficient excuse for not cooperating with the Office of Special Prosecutions or any other investigating authority. It cannot be a sufficient excuse. I mean, if they have said that he had something else, I don't want to mention any disease, associate anybody with any disease and so on. But if it was said that he had something else, you know, but prostate cancer, hey, my brother.
It's not like malaria.
Prostate cancer, you go to any of the hospitals, go to the urology department. and see the lineup of persons. He knows that. But what does the OSP do? He writes a letter to the chief of staff. Clearly, from the interpretation of Article 88, 1 to 6, his office ought to be working under the direction of the AG. But he bypasses the AG and writes to the chief of staff, asking for some assistance to extradite Mr. Porrietta. The chief of staff then writes to the AG. The AG then writes to the office of special prosecutor and say, give me the docket you have in its current state. Add 2 investigators, let them come to my office and let's start on the process. OSP says, I haven't finished the investigations. Ally? OSP says, we haven't finished the investigations. Meanwhile, the AG is asking for the docket as it is at the time of the request. He can't go. This is the problem we have created with this contraption, that we have put together and so on. But you see, I want to make a point that I find most important. You see all the newspapers lying in front of us, and then you listen to public commentary and so on. And it is obvious immediately that something is wrong. All those people who are being investigated and whose cases are being prepared for prosecution, none of them can be referred to as a thief or a corrupt person. They are not. Wontumi is not a thief. Hanan is not a thief. Mustafa Hamid is not a thief, and so on. The only authority who can declare them as thieves or corrupt persons is the judiciary. And there has been no judicial process leading to a determination that these allegations against them are true and therefore they are corrupt. You understand what I'm saying? In fact, under normal circumstances, most of our commentary would amount to contempt of court because they are highly prejudicial. You understand? Highly prejudicial. Yes, they are accused persons, allegations have been made against them and so on, but ultimate verdict lies with the courts. Now, the other thing which is important in this conversation is simply the fact that our system of justice is biased in favor of the elite, of the bourgeoisie. Our system of justice is deliberately class biased. And that is why those who end up in prison very, very quickly when they are accused are the shoemakers, the trotro drivers, those who steal buckets of cassava, and those who steal small goat and fowl and so on. They end up in prison very fast. Within 1 week, matter finished, the man is in prison. It is because of the class bias of our system. Master, if you have somebody who has sufficient resources, who is able to employ the best lawyers, who probably is a lodge member with a judge and so on, their cases are never settled in time. 10 years you are still in court. Any small thing, they make reference to Supreme Court, they are going for interpretation of the Constitution. That alone is 3 months, sometimes 1 year, and so on. So, important rich people, those, the bourgeois class and so on, you hardly win cases against them. And check the history. Master, check the history. If you are a carpenter, especially a self-employed carpenter who has not had a job for 6 months, go and steal a fowl and see. Sharp, sharp, you won't go to prison one time. But if you are big-time lawyer with a few millions in your account, and you happen to be a member of a certain lodge, where a prominent chief has a post in that lodge and so on, how can you go to prison? How can you be convicted?
You go and negotiate.
Sometimes you don't even negotiate. They forgive your sins and then you go home and sleep. So this class bias in our system is something that perhaps one day with a properly oriented government and so on, we should deal with. The class bias of our judicial architecture is something that perhaps we need to deal with and so on. Now, Sohini, this campaign against corruption, Aura, featured so prominently in the NDC campaign. And I remember, Sohini, maybe, oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Sohini.
Next time I'm here.
Look, I remember very clearly, very, very clearly, that I had occasion to speak to the NDC public, you know. And I told the NDC and its leaders that the pitch of that anti-corruption campaign was problematic. It was problematic. Why was it problematic? It was problematic because at the time, all of us had made statements suspecting that the judiciary had been packed, all the way from the High Court to the Supreme Court. You understand? Now, in a situation where the judiciary has allegedly been packed, how are you going to fulfill that promise we were making to everybody about Aura and so on? It was impossible. You understand? Now, if you add the suspicion that the judiciary had been packed to the class bias of the whole architecture, you have a double-barrel problem to deal with. You understand? And so on. And then history also should have taught us important lessons. There's a history. I mean, cases which governments put before courts, and not just the NDC, NPP, and so on, lasted 10 years. We could not find a solution to the cases and so on. Now, what the NDC managed to do is what is biting the NDC today. And only 2 days ago, I spoke on this Pan-African platform, and I told stories about people that I had had conversations with. You know, I had a conversation with a lawyer and a university lecturer, and one of them actually told me that, look, John Mahama, if he comes to power for 4 years, he doesn't repair one road, repair, not construct, repair one road. If he doesn't fight the deterioration of the city, if he doesn't expand employment, if he doesn't do anything, and he just catches these NPP people who he describes as thieves and locks them up and throws the key away, he will be his hero forever. Even a lawyer told me that his only expectation is that NPP looters, that's what he said, should be arrested, prosecuted, and locked up. That's his only expectation. They don't care about the fact that over the last 3 years, we have lost 50% of our cocoa production. It doesn't matter to them. Now, these are lawyers and university lecturers. So can you imagine what party food soldiers are thinking and saying? And in fact, this university lecturer I told is not even a member of the NDC. Indeed, when I got to know him, he was an MPP loyalist. This is how they are thinking. This is where we have gotten to. And it is a dangerous place to be. Because what you are doing now is that we are baiting for blood. We have become a mob. Baiting for blood. We want to see blood. We want to see them arrested. We want to see them thrown in prison. No matter how you do it, just throw them into prison and satisfy us. Look, whether you like it or not, John Mahama assumed office. Somehow, and I don't know how it was done, the city is now exchanging at 10 cedis to $1. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. Who cares? We want them in jail. You say CD is 10 cedis to $1. You haven't jailed the people who are coming to us and saying CD is 10 cedis to $1. We don't care. He has launched the big push. You understand?
I'm not even talking about it.
The road all the way from Takoradi to Cape Coast is being dualized. He's talking about big, big projects. Who cares? Nobody cares. They don't mind. All they want is to see NPP leaders in jail. Look at the rate of inflation. The rate of inflation has fallen drastically. Who cares? They don't care. You are wasting their time by telling them about inflation. Catch them and put them in prison. You see, so the NDC itself has created a problem for itself. Because if the focus had not been on aura, solely on aura, or so largely on aura, by now, John Mahama's administration will be applauded all over the place. Nobody wants to applaud John Mahama's administration. There are two things that the public cares about. And indeed, if you look at opinion polls and so on, and I have quite a few interesting ones which have not been made public, very serious ones, reliable ones, it has not been made public. One day, if you insist, I'll show it to you. Why? The popularity of the government is going down. Okay? Why is it going down? Two things. Galamsey and the fight against corruption. Only two things. How would anybody get into government and make his own life and future and present and so on dependent on two items? When there's so much to be done in every sector, crucial things to be done in every sector and so on. Okay? So, to a very large extent, this is a problem that the NDC brought upon its head. When I made the statements that I referred to at the Atamil's Memorial Lecture, wow, the next day, you should see the messages I got. You should see the messages I got. And I laughed. Because I knew that it would not take too long for what I was saying then to become manifest. And it is becoming manifest now. Now, you can pave our roads with gold. And make zebra crossings with diamonds and so on. They don't care. They want them arrested. They want them jailed and so on. Now, perhaps the final point that I want to make is that all Ghanaians, including members of the New Patriotic Party, have rights which should not be trampled upon. And this is an important point. All Ghanaians. All Ghanaians. Rights which must be respected. Those against whom allegations are made must be given every opportunity to defend themselves according to law. That is the kind of society we want to build. And I've said on many occasions that some of the things that happened after the overthrow of the Nkrumah government, I don't want to see them happen again. I don't want to see a repeat of the Boy Moses episode where a human being was arrested at the airport. He was actually put in a cage, tied to a moving vehicle and driven through the principal streets of Accra. It should never happen again in this country. It should never happen again. I don't want to see the repeat of a high Kanea, which happened in the Rawlings era. It's an aberration which should never happen again. You understand? I spent a considerable amount of time in prison with soldiers, other ranks, and so on. And Master, some of the things that happened to them, you can't say. I was in military cells with Nana Okuchwe-Bekwin, then national chairman of the PNP. You know, early in the morning, they would dig a trench and ask this old man to climb into the trench. And they would fire bullets above his head. If he had a weak heart, he would have died. I was in the same cell with Okuchwe-Bekwin when his son was brought into the cell. Can you imagine the torture? And the instruction was that father and son should never talk to each other, and they were in the same cell. And they didn't talk to each other because of fear. And so, can you imagine the torture? Lieutenant Dennis, I was in the same cell with Lieutenant Dennis. You know, at night, you hear the armored cars roll in, and Lieutenant Dennis will be put in an armored car, and he'll be gone until dawn. And by the time they bring him at dawn, there'll be sand in his nose, ears, and mouth. Sea sand. Obviously, they took him to the beach. And he can't move an arm. And he'll be lying there for dead. After 2-3 days, he starts to move his hand. Then he starts exercising until he begins to feel normal. Then they come for him again and repeat that treatment. These things should never happen again. We have to make a commitment to respecting the dignity of our citizens. We have to make a commitment to protecting the liberties of our people, their rights and so on. So yes, we have to fight corruption. Yes, those who have allegedly stolen money and so on, we should retrieve them, but not at the expense of anybody's liberty and rights. And this point must be made as strongly as possible. Okay? Look, when I gave the Mills Memorial Lectures, I predicted, and I'm sure that Sana, you were there, and Suhini, I suspect you were there. I boldly predicted at the time that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama would become the next president, that he would be elected president. Because you could feel, you knew what was happening. You looked at the prices of food. It had gone up by 500% and so on. You could tell that change was imminent and so on. Today, there are things that we can still feel and tell. And that is this poison, this poison which has been sown in the system. The government only does well if it catches NPP people and throws them in jail. Will come back to cause a lot of havoc if it's not managed well. I've spoken to many lawyers, many distinguished lawyers, senior lawyers, and so on. In fact, one of them is Alhaji Inu Safuseni, who testified that Dominic Ayini is a fantastic lawyer, that he's very learned, he's a principled man, and so on. So, how come that public expectation is not being met? Because it simply cannot be met. You understand? So, finally, let me say that as for the fight against corruption, nobody can be against it. Nobody can be against it. The struggle to retrieve whatever may have been stolen, nobody can be against it. The struggle to establish some sanity in public administration, nobody can be against it. But there are real constraints which we need to appreciate. Finito.
Thank you very much. In fact,
I'm not PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.